In the world of Warcraft, Guild Wars. Wait, no, Tyria. Yes, in the world of Tyria, we have guilds, we have wars, and we have story. I have just finished the main campaign of the original game and definitely have some thoughts on how it works. Let me tell you, this game, before even getting into the added content that dropped after release, is still a great experience. In my last video, it was my first impressions of the game itself. I made it through the level 40 personal quests. There's 80 levels total. But stopped there as the video itself was intended to be my first impressions to begin with. And boy, am I glad I stopped there, because that was pretty much when the story picked up. It's not a groundbreaking story by any means, but it's still really good and interesting stuff. The more I played, the more I saw the characters and their development, the more I got interested in reading up on the lore to the world. I'm the type of person that will accidentally spoil certain story details to myself simply because I'm interested in finding out the lore information on something and it turns into a slippery slope. However, I'm still pretty much spoiler free from anything past where I've gotten in the game as of now. With all that in mind, what do you say we hop into my experience in the second half of the main story for the original game release? Because this video involves the second half of the story, it will contain spoilers for the rest of the video. If you would like to experience the game's story for yourself, I suggest clicking off the video now. You have 10 seconds. Alright, let's get my thoughts on the story out of the way first. The story for the second half of the campaign just hit and kept on running. There are some good and bad things because of this, and I'll go into both. While I liked what story we got up to that point, it's still like night and day with the beginning. In the beginning half, it was both introductory as well as set up for what's to come. Because of that, some of the story beats were separate from each other as more standalone kinds of narrative. This is fine and still enjoyable. Going from the humble beginnings of my character, Vladithar, to somehow ending up a full-on commander of an army. While stuff like this isn't unheard of in stories, it's still a bunch of promotions at breakneck speed. While the starting half was filled with separate story beats, the ending half was following one story overall right to the ending. Vladithar here joined the group called the Vigil, a military group dedicated to taking down the Elder Dragons, working with Colonel Roy Campbell. Wait a minute, that's not the Colonel.
That's not possible.
With all due respect, General, isn't that a job for the Lion Guard?
Working with War Master Forgel Kernson, who has a voice unlike anything I've clearly ever heard before.
Snake.
We continue trying to fight against the Elder Dragons. There is one that takes precedence though, and that is a dragon that could raise an army of the dead. The Elder Dragon, Zaitan. We pick a race to help and get an alliance out of. I chose the Scary Frog people.
You there. We're from the Vigil, and we're here about the sacrifices. We heard you talking to that guard. Maybe we can help.
I don't know, but I do need help. My brother was our champion. He offered himself as a sacrifice to save our village.
I get a huge promotion afterward, and then work together with Campbell's Chicken Noodle Soup on a lead that tells us that we're about to get attacked. So basically, Zaitan decided he wanted to make his army bigger. So he decided to attack a huge settlement of races called Lion's Arch. Now, we don't like people being dead, so we fight back on a fortress island. We lost. And then War Master Roy Ferguson Campbell IV, pretty sure that's it, decided to hold the army back by himself so we could get away. Now, Vladithar is on his own. Just him. And an entire military organization hell-bent on destroying the dragons. Nobody to help out. But these other two groups of ragtag misfits who also happen to be hell-bent on destroying the dragons. I wonder if they have anything in common. Oh yeah, there's also this super important microwave salad that we work together with to take down Zaitan. He's not very good at inspirational speeches though.
But we live, and we breathe, and we fight.
This is where the story really picks up. Remember when I said the story hit and kept on running? The rest of the questline is the military operations on taking the fight to Zaitan himself on the island of Or. During this time, I actually didn't want to stop playing the story. The only thing that actually stopped me from that was not being the required level for the next batch of quests. Well, that and the fact that the game said level 79 started the next batch of personal quests, but it was actually 80. So watch out for that, guys. So with our newfound alliance with 3 groups, we naturally put the non-military based person in charge of everything. Then we make a fort and call it Fort Trinity. Get it? Try? 3? Then we get onto an island and start fighting with Zaitan's eyes and mouth. They're not attached to him, and they're not just titles in some weird hierarchy for some reason. They are how he sees and eats. It's weird dragon magic, I guess. So we find them and fight them, and then they die. There's actually a pretty cool sequence that I like after the final fight, where you have to protect Traherne while he performs a ritual. They turn off the sound effects while you're fighting everything solo, and have a lyricless version of Fear Not This Night playing. Your allies protecting the entrance come in following the enemies, and it just turns into this really cool and cinematic ending to the quest. I really enjoyed it overall. Then comes the fight with Zaitan himself. Oh, it's a dungeon. Well, I guess now I have to find a group and go in there to psych. I soloed that thing. Now to fight Zaitan. Oh, he big. The day is won. Zaitan is dead. We can now celebrate with no colors on screen for some reason. All in all, I liked the story a lot. It was simple, easy to follow, and believable. You may be the hero of this story, but you're also not perfect. People have died under our command many times in this. All capable sounding people. You get to see the ramifications of how war affects the survivors.
Is that supposed to make me feel better? The war can go on without Tom, but I can't. How could you let this happen? You murdered my husband, you and your pact. Get away from me! Just get away!
You could sort of call this a call to arms type of story. Your character starts out with a small background in your race starting zone and eventually becomes a top dog in taking on the Elder Dragons, literally going from 0 to hero in this scenario. It's a tried and true way to tell a good story overall, and Guild Wars 2 putting its own spin on it is icing on the cake. The only issue I could say I had with it would be the fact that Traherne, a character with absolutely no military background, is all of a sudden the leader of this ragtag army against an insanely huge and growing army. Traherne is kind of just put in there and ends up all of a sudden being able to make all the sound tactical decisions leading to Zaitan's demise. This would be the only part that I would say is a bit unrealistic. Outside of that, everything else is fine. Now, there are 2 other things I'd like to bring up, so let's talk about them. The first I'd like to talk about is how I realized after I posted my previous video that I neglected to talk about the mounts in Guild Wars 2. I don't know how I forgot to talk about something like that while even having footage, but here we are. Anyway, I only have access to one type of mount so far, you know, since I'm at the beginning of the game and all. The mounts in Guild Wars 2 are all based around different types of gameplay mechanics. If you see a mount in an MMO, typically it's something used to get from point A to point B. The mounts in Guild Wars 2, however, add mechanics to help with further traversal as well as making them more interactive and thus more fun to use overall. The mount that I have access to right now allows me to not only move faster, but to also jump farther. So let's say there's a bit of a ravine that I can't make the jump for. I might be able to do so with this mount. And I've heard that you can even make it stronger in future content as well, so I'm looking forward to getting into that at a later date. As for the second thing though, it's about how long it took me to get through all the story content due to the constant stream of errors I would get in story content. I was kicked from the game after watching cutscenes constantly, and if you're kicked, you have to start the whole story quest from the beginning again. This gets especially tedious the longer the quests get. The only fix I could find online was people saying to have the game fix the files. Well, I have this on Steam, something relatively new for the game. Because of this, I don't see how I can fix the files like others could. Steam has the ability to fix files, but it seems to involve it completely uninstalling and reinstalling the game. So I've had to do this multiple times just to get through the story. It's a pretty major tech issue that can actually deter players from continuing the game. I did persist though. I even found out why I would get error coded to the character select screen. As it turns out, it's from the game not having the cutscene working properly. From missing voice actor dialogue, all the way to missing entire character models entirely. It's pretty bad.
My own hat, my own form. My mind is no longer controlled by the dragon's curse.
Hopefully this is something that can be fixed by the developers at some point, or for them to look into it in the future. It's a pretty bad gate of entry to their game that they put so many years of work into, just for players to walk away. Alright, now that I have the entire story under my belt, what do I think of my time in Tyria? Well, I can definitely say it's been a fun time for sure. The initial questing difference in this really subverted my expectations when it comes to MMO questing. Add in a well-written story that even gives you choices, and I'm sold. I can't wait to experience what else this game has to offer. I've heard that Living Worlds Season 1 was out of the game for the longest time, and it was just recently brought back in its entirety. So maybe it's a good thing I haven't touched the game until now after all. Well, time to see how the story continues. I'm sure it's all sunshine and rainbows from here.